Hey everyone, welcome to Pastor's Podcast Season 3. I'm Banning Liebscher. We have the honor this season of partnering with World Vision. World Vision is a Christian humanitarian organization, and we get to partner with them to serve children and families around the world that are dealing with poverty and injustice.
More than 800 children under the age of 5 die every day from diarrhea caused by contaminated water, poor sanitation, and unsafe hygiene. 1 in every 10 people on the planet have no access to clean water. That's 771 million people who lack basic drinking water access, with 122 million people still using surface water as their source. The global water crisis is disproportionately impacting women and girls who spend an estimated 200 million hours hauling water every day, robbing them of a fulfilling life. Access to clean water plays a critical role in addressing the global hunger crisis that's put millions at risk of starvation, ill health, lack of education, and being unable to generate income. But World Vision believes the global water and sanitation crisis can be solved within our lifetime. That's why they're focused on providing clean water and sanitation to every person in every community they work in, including the most vulnerable populations in the hardest to reach places. With a presence in nearly 100 countries, World Vision is reaching 1 new person with clean water every 10 seconds as the leading non-governmental provider of clean water in the developing world. At Jesus Culture, this is something we believe the church must be involved in. We cannot just talk about changing the world. We must be actively engaged in practical, life-saving ways that will impact communities in these regions. Whether you want to give on your own, with your family, community group, or as a church, your one-time donation to the World Vision Fund will create lasting change alongside kids and communities around the world, including bringing life-changing clean water to the forgotten, the marginalized, and the vulnerable. I want to say thank you for partnering with Jesus Culture and partnering with World Vision to see this happen. You can give now by visiting worldvision.org/JCPN and donate today. Welcome to Pastor's Podcast Season 3. Season 3, fellas, part of the Jesus Culture Podcast Network. We're here. This is what we do, man. We just love to come alongside pastors, church leaders, anybody in the trenches, anybody building local church. We just believe so deeply in the local church that this is what we do. We put on Pastor's Podcast. So great to have you with us. Whether you're watching online or listening on the podcast, it really is good to have you with us. And I just want to say, I mean, it's going to sound cheesy a little bit. Are we allowed to get cheesy?
We're allowed.
The podcast. Really genuinely so grateful for all the work that you guys do. And just the sacrifice. I mean, this past season has not been an easy one. And here you are still standing, still loving Jesus, still going after it. So I'm Banning Liebscher, the pastor of Jesus Culture. I get to host this podcast, and then I get to bring in some really good friends to host it with me. So why don't you just introduce yourself over here, David?
David Perkins, Radiant Church, Kansas City. We planted 5.5 years ago. Proud of all the pastors that are plowing right now. This session's going to be awesome for...
Is it what you thought it would be when you planted? Because you had a really successful youth ministry.
Yeah.
And you have a really successful church. To be all honest, so your church is thriving and people would look at you and go, dude,
Absolutely.
But when you kind of got into it, is it what you thought it'd be?
It's different than I thought. I'm more dependent, I think, on God than ever. My family is united on mission more than ever. And it's laboring. And it's rewarding, but it's definitely work.
Yeah. It is a lot of work. You got to roll up your sleeves and get to work on this type of stuff. David is, we talk about this a lot. We'll have David come in. with our staff, our church, teach on many things, but teach on prayer. One of the best guys I've seen to ever teach on prayer. And then on family stuff too. But Lyle, I don't know if you've heard him talk about family stuff, but it's one of those ones where you're like, I don't know if I'm really encouraged or really discouraged right now.
Like I'm a terrible dad.
Totally like
listening to his
I don't know if I
testimonies.
feel more inspired to be a
Right.
dad or if I just want to give up, So thank you for being that guy in my life.
Whatever I can do.
Well, I really appreciate you doing that. And Lyle Phillips, pastoring in Nashville, Tennessee, which not a lot of people can say Nashville. They can say Franklin. They can
That's
say,
right.
but you're actually in Nashville.
Nashville proper, just
Nashville
a few miles
proper.
from the skyline.
That's
so
right.
we're in East Nashville. Legacy Nashville is the name of our church, and we've been going for 6 years in just a few weeks.
Officially 6 years?
Officially 6 years as a local church. And
Yes.
I know you're going to tease me about
Now, I'm not going to
this.
teach you about this. Lyle, there's a couple guys on this podcast, interestingly enough, that kind of got like thrown into senior pastoring. Like, wasn't
Reluctant
necessarily
pastors.
part of their plan.
Yes.
Wasn't really what they were thinking. We're going to do something else, and then decided to do it, and are quite frankly pretty good at it. So,
Man, thanks.
6 years, huh?
Lyle's story about missions and God moving in power is so powerful.
I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's incredible.
Thanks,
so you
bud.
guys were kind of doing like a Sunday night gathering kind of for
Yep.
the region and kind of a going after God service, which is awesome. What not just our conversation, because you don't have to bring that up, but when did you really know, like, I actually am going to go pastor a church, not just run a meeting on Sunday nights?
Interestingly enough, I knew when I thought about quitting. And the reason I say that is because as I looked around at the gathering on Sunday evenings, and I thought, if I quit, where will these people go
Right
to
there.
have fellowship?
Come on, Pastor.
There it
And
is.
It broke my heart, to be honest, at the expense of sounding dramatic from the jump. It just broke my heart. And I'm like, I want to be a pastor because I love these people.
Yeah, that's so incredible. Now, you come from Kentucky, born and raised?
West Kentucky, baby.
What do you, coming from West Kentucky, what do I need to know about people that come from West Kentucky?
Well, you have to play basketball. Every single house has a hoop in the backyard.
Totally.
So you got to bleed blue for the Kentucky Wildcats because
exactly
we don't
right.
even respect the Louisville Cardinals.
Yeah.
So you have to do that. You also have to know how to have church in a brush arbor. And I know you don't know what that is.
I don't know what that is.
So it's an outdoor shanty that you have revival meetings in with sawdust floors.
You full on, yeah, revival. There's revival stories from
Oh,
Kentucky
absolutely.
way back in the day.
Hey, that's the circuit riders of old, and
What's the
I grew up
most
in that area.
What's the most hick thing you grew up doing?
Fighting bees.
Fighting bees.
You didn't even have to think about it. Full on fighting
absolutely.
bees.
We
Wait,
You didn't
say it
name this
again.
episode Fighting Bees.
Wait, what was it?
Oh yeah, fighting bees. So this is what we would do as family reunions. I'm not joking. I know this sounds funny, but if you look up the first ever season of the country music television, the
Yeah.
Country Fried Home Videos hosted by Jeff Foxworthy, my family won.
Wow.
That's right. For fighting bees.
What's fighting
What
bees?
is that? For the
what you-
honey?
No, just for fun. It's more of a sport.
You got to unpack this for me. I'm sorry. Listen, if you're listening from around the world right now, Kentucky is its own planet. It's
Yeah.
its own little
It's its own
universe.
culture. You can
Its
be a
own-
missionary to
Yeah, and is
Kentucky.
Western Kentucky its own culture?
It is.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Western Kentucky. So you're fighting bees.
Yeah, so you rustle up some ground bees. So you got to get down in a hole where some bees might be, and you poke at it with a stick until they swarm you, and then you fight the bees, and the last person to get stung wins.
I thought you're making this up.
No, bro, it's a real thing.
And so how many people are playing? So is it
As many as are
so
willing.
like 40 people could get stung?
Probably more like 20, mostly the men. So you go shirtless,
Wait,
and then you get a
did
couple
actually,
switches.
Did you love this?
Of course.
Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, man.
I just said, "What's the most hick thing you did?"
had
And you
that
said,
ready to
"Fighting
go.
bees."
You had that
Absolutely.
ready to go.
And that is everything I hoped it would be. When you
Absolutely.
said fighting bees. That's
Shooting
sounds.
skeet, riding four-wheelers. That's
Do
what we
you
did.
kind of look at men sometimes and think, you're kind of a sissy? You ever
Soft as melted ice cream.
Don't answer about the men on this podcast.
You've never fought bees, so that's amazing. Now, what did you bring from the Western Kentucky church culture that you love?
Man, that Holy Ghost power.
There we go. Come
Right?
on.
So I grew up in church services where the pastor would run the pews. Have you ever seen that before? You ever seen
No.
that before? Yeah, so they run the back of the pews. So like the congregants would split like the Red Sea, and then the pastor would take off and run the
On
tops
top of the pews.
On top of the pews while preaching with a microphone, and you sort of wave the offhand.
That's
and
amazing.
yell. And that was something that I haven't done that at Legacy Nashville, but I've
Dude,
wanted
if you take
to.
a spill on that, I have to tell you, there's not one thing I don't like about what you just said. That is amazing.
It's a fun time.
But it is actually amazing. Some of that, what people would kind of consider backwoods, kind of, you know what I'm saying? That whatever, that uneducated kind of whatever. There really was the power of God.
100%. I mean,
These guys just, it was like faith too, man. They just believed God for stuff.
you know how many times I heard the scripture quoted? They could perceive that they were unlearned, and yet they had been with Jesus.
Every Sunday, it's Acts 4, baby.
Oh yeah, Acts
man.
2:38 actually.
There you go.
Yeah.
But we'd sneak in Acts 4 because we'd always pray for the sick, and that was something really powerful about the church services I grew up in. There was never a meeting, Banning, that we did not pray for the sick.
See, I love that. I think,
Never a
honestly, some of that stuff for me, that raw, just going after God, not having it all together, that's incredible.
Fresh.
A woman punched me in the chest one time for not worshiping hard enough.
How old were you?
Probably about 21. Wow. Yeah, I was on the front row, so you can't stand on the front row and not go in.
Yeah, of course, that phrase right there, and not go in.
Yeah.
You can't stand on the front row and not go in.
And she goes, "Come on." Whoa.
Is there any of that flavor in your current young hipster Nashville, East Nashville church?
100%. Come visit anytime. You guys are both invited, as well as everybody watching, and that flavor is there.
Are you
We
hardcore?
get
Do
after
people
it.
have a hard time, or is it the South so they kind of just understand it? 'Cause I'm in the South sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, this is actually probably more a few years ago. I'd be sitting in the South, and those pastors would be going at their congregation, and I'm like, oh my gosh, dude, this would never fly in California, ever.
Right, yeah.
Ever.
Oh, definitely.
We got to be more sensitive because we got a lot of people from your neck of the woods moving
Yeah,
in.
they all moved out. Thank you.
Just kidding.
nobody
I'm
wants-
just
yeah,
kidding.
Yeah, you're not
No.
kidding. It's the problem. So.
It's great. I mean, I think at this stage, like I have enough equity with our community that I can go in a little bit from time to time, and they kind of laugh it off. Like,
Oh
that's
my
just Pastor
gosh.
Lyle.
Running the pews, fighting the bees, soft as melted ice cream.
Pastors Conference, we should do Fighting Bees.
Oh,
like
we're
you should lead it.
I'd be happy to
Just
pull up
out.
some home videos.
I don't even know where I would find ground bees. Like, just that in itself
Yeah.
is like, I don't even know where a ground bee's at. It's just,
Maybe it's not
You spend a lot of
possible.
time outside when you live in Kentucky.
yes. You know, I've never been to Kentucky.
You should go.
Yeah,
it's an
that
amazing
sounds
place.
Like it sounds like it's on my list. So, listen, guys, I'm excited. We've been sitting down having conversations, and man, just such rich conversations. I think one of the things that's beautiful is when you're pastoring, you're in the church, everybody listening. It has at some level skin in the game of helping build the local church. In the local church, they're invested. I think that we have these conversations, and today we're going to have Sam Chan come on, Dr. Sam Chan, and it just an unbelievable. I was mentioning to you before, like one of the best conversations I've had on leadership was when we had him on our regular podcast, and when we were sitting down saying who do we want to have on, he was a guy at the top of our list, and so I'm excited to be able to sit down. We're actually going to talk a few things with him, but one of the things we're going to talk about is a book he wrote called Leadership Pain, and it was interesting because. You know, he wrote it before the pandemic, but I'm not sure anything feels more relevant now than walking through this thing, you know. And I think when I'm around guys like him, you know, and Lyle, you've connected with him, and David, I don't know if you've connected with him
never
yet. You read the book,
Loved
but the courage that comes.
Right.
I think this is one of the things that I love about guys like him. They're able to both speak to things, give context for things that give you courage.
That's awesome.
So they're able to kind of give some context, like even leadership. Hey, leadership's pain, got pain involved.
Right.
And there's just some courage going, oh, okay, all right, I can get through that thing. So we're excited to jump on and just kind of have a conversation with him. Well, Sam Chan, it's so great to have you on with us. I sure appreciate you taking some time to sit down with some pastors and church leaders and just have a conversation. Thanks for jumping on the podcast.
It's what an honor and joy it is to be with you, and just great to know that you're still doing what you're doing and you really have a greater impact than you realize. You're a modest man and you don't take compliments easily, but kudos to you for everything you're doing for the kingdom.
I appreciate that. That means the world to me. I was just telling these guys, and this is the truth. We do another podcast, just a regular Jesus Culture podcast, and we had Sam come on, and was maybe, oh gosh, I don't want to exaggerate at this point, maybe the best conversation I've had.
Wow.
On leadership stuff. I sat the entire time just taking notes, still have all the notes. It's all in my iPad. Like, I didn't get rid of it. Like some you just kind of throw away. It was so rich. And so when we sat down today, when we sat down to talk about the podcast, we thought, man, we would really love to have you on. Sam, can you kind of give a little bit of context to who you are and kind of your background and what you're doing?
Very, very quickly, my name is Sam Chand. I live in Atlanta. I'm married, been married to Brenda for 44 years. Both of us will turn 70 in just a few weeks.
Come on.
I have two adult daughters. I have 2 grandchildren and a son-in-law. I came to America in 1973 to college. And so I've been here long enough. My father was a spirit-filled pastor in India, so I was born and raised in a Christian home, in a spirit-filled home. I got saved at the age of 7. I've been saved off and on since then. My theology allows me to have off days, and that's just it's all right.
Sam, what part of India? May I ask, Sam, what part of India?
Youth pastor. Sorry, Lyle.
What part of India, Sam?
North India, city of Lucknow.
Okay, I know where that's at. I used to be a missionary in India, and I lived in Kakinada in Andhra Pradesh.
Wow, thank you so much for your investment in our country. It's changed a lot since then.
I miss it a lot.
It's a very, very difficult place to do ministry now because of the anti-conversion laws.
Yeah.
So, it's just a tough place. So I've been a youth pastor. I pastored church in Michigan. Then I became a Christian University president from 1989 to 2003 in Atlanta. And somewhere in there, I started traveling and writing books and meeting people. I've written 26 books on leadership now. Probably I've consulted and spoken on every continent, most of the large platforms, and consulted with some of the largest church pastors all over the world. And that's what I do right now. Probably the biggest thing I'm doing is transition succession planning.
That's a whole
late for most pastors, but I'm trying.
That's a whole podcast right there. When did you know? Now I have questions just off of your introduction. When did you know that you were called to not just be a student of leadership, but to begin to actually invest in leaders at that level?
I'm the biggest accident you ever seen.
Wow.
Nothing. I teach people strategy, but there's nothing strategic about my life. It's just been a zigzag, up and down, in and out kind of a life that I've lived. For example, think about the irony of this. So I'm pastoring this church in Michigan. On a good Sunday, 65, 75 people. One Sunday we had 150, but we had food that day. And so a country church, the closest blinking light to my 65, 70% church was 3.5 miles. The closest McDonald's was 18 miles.
Oh,
so
my
we were in
gosh.
the middle of nowhere. Now think about the irony of this. I pastored a church of 65 to 75 people on a regular basis, right?
Yeah.
And now I consult with the largest churches around. I have never built a building in my life. I'm around churches that have massive structures. So, one of my clients I'm working with right now, his church seats 10,000 people
Jeez.
in theater-style chairs. Now, all that to say is, if that's not an accident, what is?
Yeah.
I have no pedigree. I have no training. I have no certification. I'm just a hack.
That's incredible. That really is amazing. When did you?
Who wrote the most brilliant book on leadership ever?
Yes. When did you find? Now I'm just intrigued by your story. When did you find the confidence, or did you just continue to step forward and go through open doors?
So my friend Tim Elmore teaches us there are 4 ways that God speaks to you in the Bible, hence could be true today. One is a call from birth. One is a thunderbolt. You hear God speak like Abraham, Paul, and so and so, Jeremiah, so on and so forth. Then the other two is where I live. Number 3 is growing awareness, and number 4 is open doors. So my whole life has been about this growing awareness and open doors. And so my philosophy became very clear, especially as an immigrant. You got to go back to 73, 74. I'm an immigrant. I land in America and with literally 87 cents in my pocket in JFK Airport in New York. And I know what it is to eat out of dumpsters on a regular basis. People give me a couple bucks here, $5 there, and that's how I made my living. And all that to say is that I created a paradigm which is very simple. God, if you'll open the door, I'll walk through there. And here's my paradigm. You can always walk out of a room, but you can't always walk into a room.
Wow.
So when I walk into a room, I believe God is there. Now, I've walked into some wrong rooms as well, but God gives you open doors to walk out of there.
Yeah.
But so all of my life has been by invitation. There's no reason for me to be on your podcast, but you invited me and I'm honored to be there. And I'm just grateful for where God has brought me from and where he has taken me. I don't take anything for granted. And that is why it's important, I think, for all of us to know we've been brought here. We didn't come here. We've been brought here. And because we've been brought here, we have to be grateful to the thousands of people who brought us here.
Guys, I have so many questions
So good.
already. Maybe we'll get to them in what we're talking about, because even what you're talking about, how you started out, and just the perseverance, the gratefulness, the grit, like the things that it really requires to walk out the call of God on your life.
Yes.
I'm sure that people are telling some of those stories, but I think sometimes we just see people where they are, but don't connect the storyline that kind of got them where they were.
Absolutely.
So you developed such grit and strength. You tell that story in your book. Can you talk to us about how to grow our level of leadership pain, like how we can handle it, how we can take it? With mostly pastors.
And what does that even mean, leadership pain? Keep going.
Well, we've had so many peers and friends that are either discouraged or have quit, and your whole book about raising that level is so powerful. Can you just tell us a little bit more about how we can develop that?
Writing a book is one thing, living it is something else. I wrote that book in 2015, and it's done really well. It's become my bestseller. It is still, in all these years, thousands of Christian leadership books have come on Amazon, but this one just kind of stays up in the top somewhere. It's crazy. And I can just tell you the two things that helped me. So, David, the first thing is there's no doubt in my mind that God called me. Now, the manifestations of those calls have changed. Yeah. I've been an associate pastor, a youth pastor. I've been a senior pastor. I've been a university president. Now I do whatever I do. Some people call me a consultant of some nature. But there's no doubt in my mind that God has purpose in my life. And if I do anything else, including walking away from it, that I will negate his call in my life. His call is indelibly tattooed on me in every way.
I love that.
So I would almost be walking away from God if I quit.
Yeah.
That's one thing. The second thing is I just know how God has orchestrated my pathway, and and this is not going to come across good, but those who know me know me. I have a huge heart of gratefulness. I'm just totally delighted to be anywhere. Just
Amazing.
Anywhere. No invitations too small. I can't do everything. I usually say no to 9 out of 10 invitations, and I know my human limitations. But that's not because of my arrogance or pride or pompous whatever. I'm just grateful, David, that he would call me, he would choose me. And knowing what I know about my life, where I've come from, I can still see myself dumpster diving before it was fashionable. To dig out food in Southeast Atlanta behind Simpson's grocery store. I mean, if it's almost like Exodus and Deuteronomy when God tells the leaders, hey, listen, be sure to tell your people to remember the stories in their lives. And the tragedy of leadership right now is we have forgotten God's stories in our life.
Wow.
This is not my story or your story or Lal's story or Banning's story. This is God's story
Yes.
lived in through our life. And I'm just grateful that God has called me to do this. So it's not been easy. I mean, it's not like when the pandemic happened, I could just, I don't have donors. I don't have a church. I'm not on anybody's salary. Nobody pays me a salary. If I don't kill, I don't eat.
Yeah.
So it's just like that. I'm rambling, but
No, this is gold. What
So
you're
good.
saying is, and if I could follow this up, Sam, with this question, because I think I want to talk one more about how people are surprised by pain. Like they're surprised that there's any level of
Absolutely.
difficulty in leadership or the pain and the ability to handle that. But that issue of gratefulness, I would love for you to talk a little bit, not just to young leaders, but Lyle, you're around a lot of young leaders. You're around a lot of...
Absolutely.
One of the things that I encounter in my own life as well, this isn't just about what I see in others and not me, but one of the things that I encounter is they're growing up in a culture of just entitlement. Like you see billboards that say, get the vacation you deserve. And it's like, you deserve this and you should have this. And I think people are thrown off sometimes when they don't get what they deserve. How are you helping leaders when that sense of entitlement is all around them, or that like, I deserve an easy path, I deserve this, or I deserve my version of success. And because of that, they're getting jaded and ungrateful in kind of their walk with the Lord. What's your advice to these leaders when they fall into that?
I think if I could design a billboard, I'd say life is brutal, deal with it. Just generally speaking, life is difficult. In church world, ministry, it is brutal. I'm doing a whole day conference October the 4th here in Atlanta, simply on the topic of leadership pain. It's crazy. What astounds me is emerging leaders look at people where they're at in life on the big platforms and think that's how it's always been.
Yes. Yes.
And they have no idea the hell they've been through. They have no idea the price they've paid. They have no idea what they've had to do just to keep their marriage together.
Yeah.
They have no idea that people vote with their feet every 168 hours. That's every Sunday.
Yeah.
They have no idea that one moment you can be loved and the next moment you can be hated. They have no idea that people say stuff about you on social media and you can't say anything back to them.
Yeah.
I mean, the reality of life is tough, and it is tougher in the ministry.
Wow.
And I think somewhere in there they have lost what it means to lay down your life. It is not like, they don't like me anymore. Well, deal with it. They didn't like Jesus either. And I'm being a little crude here.
No, I love it.
On purpose,
I love it
because
too.
I think there has to be a time in which somebody says, nobody promised you just a pie in the sky life. You're going to struggle. And it never ends. People look at, for example, if I could use myself, for example, because I know my story the most, people think that I have achieved a certain whatever that means, and that we live in some kind of a quarantined, that's a word everybody knows now, a quarantined bubble, immune to the adversities of this life. Hey, listen, inflation affects me as it affects you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Housing affects me as it affects you. People say whatever they want to say, and I just think it's time for people to just kind of grow up, and grow up in the way of saying, life is not easy. Life is difficult. And the other thing is, once you start running, you'll keep running.
Wow.
Once you start running, it gets easier. And gets easier.
Yeah.
And listen, if you're looking for reasons to abandon your calling, you don't have to look far.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sam, the first time
And the flip side of the same coin is, if you want to stay true to your calling, you don't have to look too far.
Come
Just
on.
look in the mirror.
Come on.
so good.
How God has been graceful in your life, how he's kept you, how he's picked you up again and again.
Yes.
I mean, that's been my life at least.
Yeah.
Sam, the first time that I heard your book, a pastor friend of mine told me about it and said that the thesis is raise the threshold of your pain and you'll be able to be a strong leader. And the first time I laughed because I thought it was comical, like surely there's more. And then I read the book and it made so much sense. And as you talked about in the book, you told story after story about pastors who refused to quit. I think that right now we have so many different pastors. There's statistics just saying that so many want to quit. It's especially in our age demographic and younger pastors. I love what you're saying about calling. Love what you're saying about gratitude. When you look at younger pastors that would say, I want to raise the threshold, but I'm emotional. What are ways that they could grow in gratitude towards God? What are ways that they could remember calling? What are some steps on how those could get deeply embedded in them?
So in my life, I have found that the best thing to do is to attach yourself to seasoned leaders who have rhino skin.
Come on.
Who are like a hippopotamus. just their skin is so thick. It's like, been there, done that. It's all right. Haven't seen it all. I'll see some more. God's good. Life is bad. We'll move on. And I think if you could get yourself and see value in the older pastors,
Gosh, it's a great word.
older leaders, somehow we have this love affair with, the young and trendy, and I have nothing against that.
Yeah, sure.
I wear some skinny jeans from time to time. Depending on the platform.
The baggy jeans are in now.
Still have not had the courage to wear ripped jeans.
No. That's too far.
Yeah. Just for me it is. But in any case, I think if you're around people who can tell their stories of how good God has been.
There it is.
I can tell you stories right now how my wife and I had our first baby. My church was paying me $125 a week before taxes. We're living in a church parsonage. If you've never lived in a church parsonage, that's a foretaste of hell.
Purgatory.
And we applied for food stamps. And got turned down because we were making $22 too much. I was stupid.
Wow.
I should have gone to my church and asked for a pay cut.
Yeah.
$22. I could get free cheese, free milk, free diapers, free formula for the baby. I think, people say, well, I haven't had a vacation in 8 months. Well, how about you haven't gone out to eat in a year?
Yeah.
How about you divided your peanut butter jelly sandwich and didn't get full? How about going for days and never getting full? Just saying, okay, this will tide me over. And I tell you, that is where what is the Bible? What is the Bible?
Yeah.
Every story we talk about in the Bible, Abraham, David, whoever comes to your mind, Jeremiah, Isaiah, New Testament, whoever comes to your mind, what is the story? They got called, they went through hell.
Yeah.
God kept showing up faithful, didn't necessarily deliver them from it, but he kept them through it all. And that is the story of people overcoming adversity. We don't preach about people who made it through life all easy. We preach about Daniel in the lion's den, not
Yes.
Daniel in the king's palace.
Yeah.
And those are kind of things that I think younger pastors need to be around older pastors to not laugh at their stories, but say, wow, you made it through that. I have such a deep appreciation for you. Will you lay hands and pray for me?
Amen.
Yes. Yeah.
Will you just keep me in your prayers? Can I call you once every 2 months for you to tell me some more stories? Because, I mean, isn't that what the entire Bible is about?
Yes.
Yeah.
And we
Yes.
got living patriarchs walking among us that live in homes waiting for somebody to come by visit them. When a younger pastor can find a pastor somewhere and say, can I buy your lunch? Just
Yeah.
talk to me.
I'm telling you what you're saying, and Lyle, I think that you have a heart and a passion for this. This theme's actually come up a little bit. Like, we have got to have older pastors in our life. And I think we have to get away from the fact of, if they're not famous, if they don't have an Instagram following, like we kind of just
So
put a
good.
value on people that are known. But like, go find the faithful. You talked about it. Your dad and his generation of pastors, faithful men, stayed true to the calling, scandal free,
Right.
and like finding
deal.
some of these men and women and letting them speak into our life, hearing their stories. What he's describing right here, I'm like, there's a real cost. This is a reminder. What we said yes to, that call has a cost attached to it.
Absolutely.
And just hearing these stories just goes, oh yes, not just that there's a cost, but I said yes for a reason. And I'm willing to walk this thing out. I love as well, Sam, as you're talking, I'm reminded of a spiritual father in my life. I'll call him, and I'm looking for empathy. He won't give me any.
Yeah.
It's amazing. He does what he's saying. Like, when he's saying grow up.
Yeah.
Like that type of thing. I'm like, dude, we have like that thing. Like, I think it's time to grow up.
Yeah.
I called him. Like, I was going through a difficult time a year and a half ago. Like, it was a pretty brutal moment. And I called, and we just had something happened. And I'm like, I just need somebody to feel sorry for me. So I called him, and I'm like, dude, this just happened. And it just was a deep hurt. And he just listens, and he goes, what are you doing? Get up. You're a great leader. Go build what you're called to build. Why are you sitting over here worrying about this? And I'm like, I just want somebody, like, can you just feel bad for a moment for me? And then
Sounds like my phone calls with you.
yeah, and then all that week, he's like texting me Winston Churchill quotes. He's like texting me like
Never give up.
Yeah, what the quote
Never,
was
ever
like,
give up.
if I stop for every barking dog, I'll never get to where. It's whatever it was. He's
I
sending
remember
me
that
these Winston Churchill quotes.
Yeah.
But it was what I needed. Honestly, I didn't need like a brother.
Yeah.
Who's like, man, I'm so sorry, man. That sounds tough. I needed a
father.
I needed a father that says, suck it up. You got to call. Go ahead, Sam.
Two things come to my mind. And this is not that difficult. Just drive through your town, find a small church.
Totally.
Don't look for the big cathedral, small church. Knock on the door, see if the pastor's in. And somebody will come to the door, and you say, I'm Pastor so-and-so. Could I just talk to you? Tell me about your life.
Yeah.
Tell me how you stay in the game. Tell me what's kept you. How come you've been married for 60 years?
Yes.
And the ministry for 85, kind of thing.
Yes.
Talk to me. How about, one of the things that happened when the pandemic happened, I had friends who were thinking, we shut down in March of 2020, and they were planning for Easter opening that same year.
Yeah.
And I kept telling them, man, this is going to be a long one. I did not know that. I was just a gut feeling. This is going to be a long one. So what I did was I sent out all of my social media, all of my emails. I sent it out and said, if you want someone to talk with you send us your name and your phone number. Somebody will call you.
Wow.
We got hundreds upon hundreds of pastors. Those are pastors only from all over the world, all time zones, all over the world, Nigeria, South Africa, India, Philippines, Australia, New Zealand, all over the United States, sending us their name and phone number. I thought for a minute I was going to do that. All of a sudden, I assembled a team of older pastors. And I said, hey, listen, will each one of you take 50, 60 names and over the next 3-4 days start calling
It's
them?
incredible.
Yes.
So I did that. Now, here's what I learned. I talked to the first guy, and he was broken and crying. And I said to him, do you mind if I prayed with you? There were just about 6-8 minute calls. Do you mind if I prayed with you? He started sobbing. I said, okay. So I prayed for him. I went on to my next call because I was making hundreds of calls.
Yeah.
I mean, that's all I did. I sat on the phone and talked to strange pastors.
That's amazing.
For by the hour. I did not know them. Did not care to know them. They would say, hey, my name is Banning. I'd say, okay, Banning, where are you located? I'm in Zimbabwe. Well, tell me about your ministry. He takes 2 minutes to tell me that. And I said to him, man, I tell you what, God is with you.
Come on.
Stay strong in it. God is going to use you in ways that you've never imagined, And I'd say to them, do you mind if I prayed with you? And here's where I'm going with the story. There became a pattern of as soon as I said to a pastor, do you mind if I prayed with you?
Wow.
And the pattern was they started sobbing and crying. Now I'm not talking about like half and half. I'm talking about 80-90% of pastors start sobbing and crying.
Wow.
When I said to them, do you mind if I prayed with you? And I just prayed with them, nothing supernatural or just prayed for them. And then it struck me. And then I started asking that question after the 25th, 27th call. I started asking questions like, Pastor Banning, could you tell me when was the last time another pastor prayed with you? I'm talking about just prayed not for your work, not for your job, just prayed with you.
Wow.
Prayed over you. And they would just start sobbing and they would say things like, it's been years, it's been years, it's been years, it's been years, it's been years. And hence, what I'm saying becomes so important. Most pastors listening to me right now will be hard-pressed. I'm not talking about a group prayer. I'm talking about an individual prayer,
Yeah.
either in person or on the phone. Pastors listening to me right now would be hard-pressed to tell you the last time another pastor, I'm not talking about their spiritual pastor, another pastor prayed for them individually, just to pray with them. Not because they're going through a hard time, just to pray with them. Most pastors are not prayed over by another pastor.
It's amazing. I think it's that challenge.
And that, my dear friend, answers David's question of the weakness of spirituality, because spirituality comes from strength to strength, person to person. In my book, Leadership Pain, I talk about pain partners. Who is your pain partner? Who would you call? We reading recently and forever of pastors, quote unquote, falling. Who did they call? Did they have anybody to call?
Yeah.
Who was praying over them? Nobody. And that is the weakness of the church. The weakness of the church is the
huge.
pulpits are weak. And the pulpits are weak not because of weak preaching. The pulpits are weak because the pastors are weak. And why are the pastors weak? Because they don't have spiritual coverings. I'm not talking about a bishop somewhere, an apostle somewhere. I'm not talking about a mass group, a denomination, a network, affiliation. All that is great and wonderful, and I'm part of those things. But what I'm saying is, when was the last time just another pastor prayed over you?
Wow.
And that you'd have to look for a long time.
Wow.
Yeah. I remember when I first started out in youth ministry.
It's huge.
I don't know why, because what Sam's talking about right now, if you're listening to this, go get that.
Yes.
Listen, I guess in some perfect world, somebody would come find you and reach out to you. And, and I would encourage you as well, like as pastors, if you're thinking about another pastor, call them, text them,
Get on the phone and pray for them. Like take that initiative. Don't. A good friend of ours who's a leadership consultant says, if you think about somebody twice, get a hold of them. That type of thing. Like, okay, I thought about you twice. I'm going to reach out to you. But also we have to go get that. If I need that, I'm not powerless. I can go get that. I can go find those pastors and just say, would you pray with me? I mean, when I first started youth ministry, I'm not patting myself on the back because I kind of did it by accident, but I was so in over my head when I first started. I had no idea what I was doing. There was a guy down the road that had been in youth ministry for 10 years at another church, different denomination. And I just went and got a hold of him and said, dude, can we connect? And we started getting together I was just a youth pastor, 21, 22, 23, 24 years old. And I'd go to his house, 6 a.m. once a week. This guy that was 10 years older than me and 10 years further down youth ministry than me. And we would just pray together, in the thing. And I just think, in the busyness of things, you just kind of forget about that, when I was in over my head and just reached out to a guy and we still have a real dear friendship now. So it's incredible.
Think about it this way, Banning. Let's just say, I'm just making this up. Let's just say 1,000 pastors listen to this, whatever we're talking about. And each of those 1,000 pastors decide that within the next 24 hours, they're going to call up 3 pastor friends.
Yeah.
Just 3 pastor friends and say, how are you, man? How's your family? How's your marriage? How's your health? How are you doing financially? And then just talk to them about them, not about church attendance and how you social media or whatever. Just talk to them about them. And then say, do you mind if I prayed with you?
Yeah, it's incredible.
Imagine if 1,000 pastors listening to us in the next 24 hours call 3 other pastors to pray over them. The power of what we are talking about right now is exponential.
Yeah.
3,000 pastors would get prayed over.
Yeah.
How crazy good is that?
And
This is why Sam's such a great leader.
Yeah.
He immediately took the idea that we had
and here's the action.
Created a system around it so that we could exponentially reach more people. We love that about you, Sam.
Yeah, we do.
I think
That's
too,
awesome.
Thank you, Lal.
it speaks a lot on your own life to take initiative, because it takes and ask someone to pray for you.
Yes.
A pastor asking a pastor instead of waiting for someone to call you as well. Like, if you're listening, it takes your time.
Yep.
And you think you have too many things on your task
Takes
list.
humility.
Takes humility.
Yep.
And we don't want to say, but it takes conviction.
Yeah.
It takes theological, biblical conviction that your prayers actually matter, and somebody praying over you will take you further than if you don't pray.
Yes.
And so I think it's big on the individual pastor to just go ask someone to pray.
Absolutely.
You know, my dad's 77, and he's, my closest comrade other than, my wife and my kids. But he will give as much as I'll ask.
Yeah.
Yes. But you gotta ask.
Yeah.
You gotta go find them.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I feel like when I look at what Sam talked about, how we have pastors falling. So many of them just stopped being vulnerable, stopped asking,
being vulnerable.
pride instead of humility, and go take that initiative.
And busyness. The humility piece is interesting because I remember when I probably hit 30, I remember feeling like I didn't want to ask questions anymore. I remember at 30, I thought if I keep asking questions of other leaders, it's going to look like I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
And I don't know if I want to look like I don't know what I'm doing. Right. But I finally just realized, but I don't know what I'm doing.
Right.
So I can act like I don't know what I'm doing, but I don't know what I'm doing. So I'm going to. But I remember it was a deliberate decision I made. To say, I may look like I don't know. I may call you and look like I'm not doing whatever else, because, and I think we just have to go after that.
What do you think it's like some of the pain conversation that we've been having? We develop that hippopotamus skin, and so we go on autopilot. So it's like, hey, I'm kind of numb to the sensitivities, the vulnerability, my own brokenness.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering from Sam.
I'm fine. I'm good. I'm fine.
Yeah, I want the hippopotamus skin, but how do I also keep a sensitive heart, Sam? Because I'm hearing you talk, and I'm
awareness.
Awareness of my own pain, because I know you've gone through a lot. Hearing your testimony is mind blowing to me. It's amazing, and so I understand how you're so grateful. But how did you cultivate a heart that was soft and malleable and sensitive in the midst of having an exterior that was hard and could handle a great deal of pain?
I think that's where the whole gratefulness piece comes in. That's where I realize God reliance. I also know that while I'm coming across as get it together, you can do this, I'm also saying, but there's something to get together.
Wow.
And something to get through. So it's not a statement in a vacuum.
Sure.
It is a statement saying, yeah, you're going through a tough time. I acknowledge that. But what are your options? I mean, are you going to bail? I mean, anybody married gets an opportunity every day to bail. You know, so I mean, you got to make up your mind somewhere or the other that, you know, when my wife and I got married in 1979, we made a decision to stay. Now, have I given her reasons and days in which I was just being a jerk?
Totally.
Sure. Plenty of them. But we made a decision to stay. And I think when I said yes, I think Banning said that word earlier, the most dangerous word in the English language. You know, once you say yes, I said yes.
Yeah.
That's good.
And so that does not mean that I do not feel the pain. That simply means yes, but I have no other option. Where can I go?
Yeah.
I mean, I burnt my ships.
Yeah.
Come on.
So
Yeah, look.
so this is just how I think. So, you know, when I'm in rooms of leaders, if I was to ask the question, how many of you want to lead leaders? Every hand will go up.
Of course.
But how do you lead leaders? You pray for leaders.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the highest level of
There it is.
leadership
Wow.
there is.
You care.
When you can,
So good.
if I could call Lyle and David and Banning's name to Jesus,
Yeah.
is there anything more I can do for you
So
than
good.
that? You know,
Yeah.
that's why when people say, all I can do is pray. Well, that's the most important thing. Start there. If you can do more, do more.
So good.
But I just think prayer
Yeah.
of the righteous avails much.
Yeah. right.
I think it is. It's in the Word, and I just believe that if we had more pastors praying for pastors, I'm not talking about big prophetic anointing, speak in tongues, interpret, you know, throw babies kind of prayer. I'm just talking about just
Kentucky prayer,
you know,
baby.
Something like, Lord, I want to pray for Lyle and his family and his wife and his children,
Yes.
that they will always know that you are with them, that your favor on them, your anointing on them. Lord, I pray that you will encourage him in the deepest times of his life, that you'll provide for him. Let your favor dwell on him. Lord, let him know that you're always there for him. In Jesus' name, amen.
Come on.
Amen. I'm trying to
That's
get on your
45
prayer list,
seconds,
Sam.
You know?
Yeah.
Yes.
But you don't have to go into any Greek and Hebrew and exegesis. Nobody gives a rip about all of that.
Right.
You know, it's when I was going through, you know, Bible college and seminary, I learned all of that, but now I have all that on my phone. So I don't know why I did all that.
It just all comes. Let me ask this real quick. Even as we just have a few more minutes here, when we sat down and had kind of the a few weeks ago, we kind of had the pre-prep. Is that a word?
It works.
The pre-prep meeting to kind of talk about this episode. We were talking about, hey, we all kind of get pain. Like the book, you said it's the best book our team's read.
Yeah.
But one of the things that Lyle was like, I'd really love to talk about systems, structures, leadership capacity. And I think at some level, and this would be the question I'd ask Sam in the segue, and Lyle, you could talk about this if you want, but
Sure.
Some of what you're talking about is you're saying there's pain that comes at me, and then there's pain from my leadership constraints. So there's pain because I need to grow
Absolutely.
as a leader. There's pain because I don't know how to set up systems structure. There's pain because I keep facing my own constraints relationally. You know what I
Yes,
mean? So
I
you're
do.
saying like,
Yep.
So there's kind of pain of somebody betrayed me, somebody left me, inflation, COVID. But then there's pain that comes in our life from me.
Yeah, I don't know what I don't know.
And not sin.
Yep.
Not like I've fallen into sin, but like as a leader, I'm running into myself.
Yes.
What's the advice? Would you say anything with that?
Because I think that is even what you're saying was, give me systems and structures.
Yeah,
because I have
like
some
you're reading
pain
my
points.
diary.
Yeah, totally.
Exactly. Because I'm constantly upset with myself for not knowing what I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I can't get through this door, and it's causing me a lot of pain.
Yes.
And so if I'm hearing what you're saying,
yes.
is we're asking Sam, like, how not spare ourselves from that pain, but how do we prepare for that moment of pain when we run up against our own capacities?
Yes.
What do we do in those moments, Sam?
Yes.
And how do we grow through those moments, not turn around and run the opposite direction?
Yeah.
So that's a really, really big question. I wrote a whole book about that, Lyle. It's called Bigger, Faster Leadership. Have you read that?
Let me pull up my Amazon right now and get it
Yes.
ordered.
Yes.
Bigger, faster,
Faster.
leadership. Bigger, faster leadership.
I'm gonna order it because I need this.
It's written only for one thing, that's systems and structures. So years ago, I was standing on in Panama City at the Panama Canal. It just takes your breath away to see what is built there, how those ships go through. And then I noticed on the other side of the Panama Canal that there were construction going on, big cranes and everything. And I asked the people what's going on, and they said, "Oh, we are widening the canal. They're widening the canal." And all of a sudden, that book dropped in my heart, and I wrote that book standing on the side of the Panama Canal, Bigger, Faster Leadership.
Wow.
And here's the thesis of that book. So the thesis of the leadership pain is that David laughed at is, the thesis of leadership pain is you will grow only to the threshold of your pain.
Wow.
You will grow only to the threshold of your pain. The more pain you can handle, the more you'll grow. So that's leadership pain. Bigger, faster leadership says your size, and your speed are controlled by your systems and structures.
Wow.
Your size and your speed are controlled by your systems and structures. So they wanted to get bigger, faster ships because they charge the ship close to $1 million, sometimes more, depending on the size of the ship. So the bigger ship that they can go through the Panama Canal, the more money they make. So your size and your speed. So every organization wants to be bigger, faster. Every organization wants to be bigger, faster. But that is dependent on systems and structures. So let me define the difference between systems and structures. So if you were to draw an organizational chart, Lyle, you would see boxes on it of some nature.
Absolutely.
Boxes on it. The boxes without any names in it, is known as a system. When you put names in it, it becomes a structure. What most churches, hardly any church, I shouldn't say most, hardly any church ever does is to create new systems. They keep restructuring. That means they'll move Susie from this box to this box and Larry from that box to that box. We shuffle boxes, but we don't resystematize. Because my question for everybody listening to me right now is, knowing what you know now, the information that you have right now, the knowledge that you have, the experience that you've had, if you could totally whiteboard Jesus culture, what would that look like?
Wow.
It will not start with names. If you start with names, it's a small conversation.
Yeah.
It is, do we even need that box anymore? Do we need another box over there? Should those boxes be consolidated? So the whole system conversation is different from a structure conversation. And you go into a staff meeting, I would say 9 out of 10 staff meetings are going to be structural conversations. And I call them tactical. They're not strategic, they're tactical. They're structural. That means Joe is not working out. What are we going to do with Joe? But you've talked about Joe not working out for the last 15 meetings nonstop. Fire him. In my book, Who's Holding Your Ladder, I said the best time to fire a person is the first time it goes through your mind.
Wow.
And listen,
Wow.
I have helped churches and pastors fire literally thousands of people in my career. And I've never had a pastor regret a firing. Never,
Wow.
never. Can I say never again? Never have I
Wow.
ever heard a pastor regret a firing. But 100% of the pastors have had the same regret. Why didn't I do this sooner?
I just had a leadership guy tell us that we were relationship hoarders.
Wow.
Yeah.
I was
yeah,
like,
yeah.
go away.
Well, I actually heard Sam speaking once to a group of leaders and pastors about this very topic, and something you've said has stuck with me for years, is if you had a cancer and you go in for the doctor to remove it, he doesn't take it out of your arm and put it in your leg. So if John is not working out on the kids team, you shouldn't put him on the parking team and think that everything's
John
going
is
to
just
turn
a
out
generic
okay.
name right now. John is just a generic name
John
right
Doe.
now.
Let's just use Banning for example.
I think this is our time. Sam, I do want to say thank you so much for coming and jumping on the podcast. I will say that you are providing resources, not just through books, through teaching, but you also have something called the Avail Journal, which is Christian leadership. Can you just very briefly tell us about that and just how people can get a hold of that?
Absolutely. When the shutdown happened in March of 2020, me and my team started thinking about how can we resource the church? How can we resource the church? And we came up with this journal called Avail Journal. It is about 120 pages long, glossy, 5-color, Christian leadership, eclectic leadership, authors from everywhere included in there, and you will grow. It's free for you for the first year. That means the next 4 issues are going to be free. Let me give you a website for it, availjournal.com, availjournal.com. And if you're listening to us over in another country apart from the USA, you can get a digital copy on your iPhone, on your iPad, on your computer, however. It'll be emailed to you, and you can read it like that. If you want it in your own home, coming to your home. And if you're listening to us right now, you're a pastor, you're on staff, you're in ministry, you're in marketplace, doesn't matter where you're at. This is not just for pastors only, even though this podcast might be. So if you're a pastor listening to me, you want all your volunteers, for example, to start getting leadership resources. All your elders start getting, or staff getting, there's no limit to that. Our business model allows us to do that. And so availjournal.com, and we're ready to send you the next issue.
I love it. Sam, thank you so much for joining us. It means the world to us.
Thank
Just
you,
feel
Sam.
so
Incredible, Sam.
so encouraged and challenged through all this. So thanks for jumping on, and we look forward to doing it again.
Thank you.
Well, I think I told you at the beginning that I just want to take notes and so much stuff. I mean, honestly, the bigger, faster leadership pain. You know what I love about him as we're just sitting here talking? I'd love to hear your guys' quick thoughts as we wrap up, but his intentionality of making you feel known, seen, and valued.
Yes.
How many times he
said our
repeated our
names.
names?
Yes.
Yep. And prayed for us.
Yes.
David, Lyle, just like you just kind of like, and I think there's a real intent. I mean, obviously that's who he is, but
Yeah.
I think we need to remember, like, it's amazing how far that goes. In like just that conversation, we're doing a podcast right now that
Yes.
I'm doing for the ministry and for pastors, and I'm like, I feel so encouraged right now after
Absolutely.
talking with him.
100%.
Dude, like I feel so encouraged.
It makes you believe in impartation. It makes you believe in relationship because there's strength. It's almost like we feel like three sons sitting
Yes.
here right now with a guy that we just,
Facts.
for me, met for the first time.
You feel connected to. You're like, I feel connected to you.
I feel loved. I feel
Yeah.
believed in.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
No, so good.
It's amazing too, like, Banning, I was just thinking about you almost initiating, creating that. And there's so many guys like that if a 40-something or a 30-something will just make the intentional relationship.
Yes.
Just ask. There's greater blessing on your life, but those are like untapped resources.
Yeah. No.
Because they want to pour into sons
They do.
and daughters.
Yeah,
they
and,
want to.
and they don't need to have built a church of 10,000 for you to get that from them. Like,
That's
we
good.
need to be
Okay.
very careful with
That's
that.
very
Can we be
good.
honest about
Yeah.
that? There are the
Oh,
fact
have we
that
not been being honest?
the fact. Well, our culture isn't. Our
Yeah,
culture.
no, that's
is
the
like,
truth. There we
I
go.
don't.
Yeah.
If it's so pragmatic, if you don't have a big church, then I'm not interested. But then you're missing so many healthy pastors.
Yes.
So many resources. It's not only painful for you; it's painful for them.
And-
they need to pour out.
Yeah.
And I can go get stuff like so they say, well, you've never been where I want to go, so I can't receive anything from you, which is a completely arrogant statement, because we're like like he said, how'd you stay married for 60 years? Mm-hmm. How'd you stay loving your kids? How'd you stay faithful to the call of God? Like those things we just dismiss. They're nothing. And so, how do you have a church of 10,000? We can read a book on that, in all honesty. Like, you can go read a book on whatever, but I just love it.
Jesus had 12.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a pretty small congregation at the end of his life.
Yeah.
And yet we look to him.
Yeah.
And then today we won't look at a guy, you've only pastored 500 people. What have you got to teach me? A lot.
Yeah.
Come on.
Can I add one more thing? Calling and gratitude. Like
so good.
The two pieces that he said will help you develop rhino skin. Yeah. And if we could go back and just remember when we were called and decide that external circumstance is not going to cause us to get out of the game, no matter what, we're going through it, and we daily live with gratitude for what we can see God at work in and the things we can't see.
Yeah.
If it was just so fresh, and it just came off his tongue that fast.
So
calling and gratitude.
It is calling and gratitude. It is the keys. Well, guys, thanks for joining us on the Pastors Podcast, part of the Jesus Culture Podcast Network, Season 3. So glad that you're with us. Hopefully you're as encouraged as we are. And if you're not, then that's okay. I'm encouraged.
Subscribe.
So it was worth it.
Subscribe. The next episode will be better.
Make sure you subscribe, press the 5-star whatever buttons.
They don't have one of those.
I'm glad you guys were with us. We'll do it again.